a fake. I mean, no one ever told Tommy that Buddy had been late almost every night because he never played the first set. He always showed up on the second set. And when we played Frank Daly's Meadowbrook, we had Monday off. We used to play a Sunday afternoon session, and in uniforms, a blue one and a gray one. And you changed at the beginning of each following week. Well, I didn't happen to go home that one weekend, and I was in the blue suit, the band was in the gray suit, and I was way uptown, and I knew my way to Frank Daly's from the Holland Tunnel, but I didn't know how to get there from the George Washington Bridge, and I was, you know, driving around New Jersey, going crazy, trying to find the Tommy Dorsey band that I belonged to. I finally arrived, and I was about 40 minutes late, and the bar was on an upper level, and I was kind of shy about, you know, running down. And there was Tommy playing my Hallelujah solos with just a bass and a drum going on the trombone. There was no piano. And he finally saw me up at the bar, and he waved his middle finger at me. Come on down here, kid. And there was a gang of people in front of the stand, and then Tommy introduced me as a guest artist. They're delighted to have me. And the very next move, after the next tune, he called the waiter over, and he ordered 2 bottles of scotch for the brass section, and 2 bottles of Canadian Club for the reeds and so forth, and some brandy for Sid Weiss, the bass player. And then about Buddy Rich, he only drinks wine, so we'll have a nice bottle of B&G or whatever for Buddy Rich. I said, cancel the wine.
And that led to a fight.
That led to an argument. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, he was late almost every night for 2.5 months, and I've only been late once. I'm not buying him wine.
So you actually got into fisticuffs with Rich?
Yeah, then when the band got off the stand, we went out in the back lot and started to beat on one. I must tell you, Buddy now is a karate expert, and he was pretty good before he took those lessons the following week, and he didn't want our uniforms being torn up and wrecked.
Well, on that note, why don't you play a song you wrote for Sinatra and the Pied Pipers at that time?
As we I'm not the guy, cared about love and I'm not the guy, cared about fortunes and such. I cared about much. Oh, look at me now. And I never knew the technique of kissing, and I never knew the thrill I could get from your touch. Never knew much.
That tune was written briefly. What do you think of when you think back of it?
Listen, Frank is a very special guy. You know, you could always borrow a fin from him, and, you know, a friendly five, as they say, and vice versa, and it was always returned immediately, as you know. But I asked Frank, well, not too long ago, I got a call about some reissues, and they wanted to talk about the Tommy Dorsey band. I think it's a Time Life thing or whatever. And I remember Frank always looking so neat, and I wondered about that. And I asked Frank at dinner, how did he possibly have his clothes looking so neat when we had been on a bus for 12 hours and the whole band looked kind of rumpled? Well, he said, well, look, you cats were sitting behind stands, and I used to have to stand up in front of the public, so I used to put my trousers under the mattress, and that's how they stayed pressed, and steam my jacket. Isn't that a kick?
Let me throw some other names at you, some quick impressions.
Okay.
Joey. Benny Goodman.
I was with Benny's band right after the war, you know, and I always wanted to play with Benny Goodman's band. In fact, I played in my high school band. His brother Irving was a trumpet player who went to the John Adams High in Queens. But in those days, if you were a good trombone player, a piano player, a drummer, whatever, all the high school kids knew one another. And I got a call about playing some club days out in Long Island. And I used to stay over at the house when Benny was a studio saxophone player. So I know I go way back with Benny, and as you know, I always wanted to play in his band, and I just loved playing in his band. It was
Fats
fun.
Waller.
Fats, I got to meet him when we did the Sunday afternoon sessions at the Famous Store. He was a great pal of Eddie Condon's. And, you know, after the session, we'd wind up at Fats' house, and he'd be playing the piano till 7 in the morning. And he was just the most wonderful, special man in the world.
Bing Crosby.
Well, Bing, I met Bing in 1940 when the Dorsey Band went out to the West Coast to open the Hollywood Palladium. And we did the soundtrack with Victor Young's orchestra and the Dorsey Band on the road to Rio. I think that was the first road picture. Either that one or Road to Morocco. two foreign places anyway, in the afternoons when I wasn't working. And I used to go to Paramount and run the tunes down of, you know, for the films with Bing, because he preferred the live piano as opposed to an acetate record to learn the songs.
Joe, you performed with Bing when he played Broadway in his last tour.
Yes, I did, at the Uris.
I saw you there.
In '76.
And I think you made the last record album that Bing Crosby did.
Yes. We did a concert in Oslo, Norway, for the Norwegian Red Cross, and they wanted to have a recording made, you know, for the Red Cross, which would be released throughout Europe. And Bing couldn't do it because he had made some other agreement with, I think it was Polygram, and they wanted to do it through United Artists.
Joe, let me ask you this.
So, well, excuse me, Bing sang Now You Has Jazz on my record.
Right.
And he sang Sail Away from Norway, a lyric he wrote to a standard tune.
Now, Crosby could have had any accompanist in the world. Why do you suppose he... Why did he pick you?
Well, I always loved, you know, I played for Lee Wiley and Billie Holiday and all the other things. And then I recorded for Bing when he came into New York. I did Personality and a whole bunch of those records, along with the fact that he recorded Hot Time in the Town of Berlin with the Andrews Sisters. And he never even saw the lead sheet as far as knowing what the tune was. He just said, whatever the tune is, it says Master Sergeant Joe Bushkin on it, and I'm sure Joe can use some money with the scale pay of the U.S. Air Force. And it turned out to be a big war hit. It was the second biggest war song.
We'll get to that song, but I think you haven't answered the question, Joe.
Meaning 90% of the time I'm really listening. They may have been running up the stairs to get on stage, which means they're slightly out of breath, which requires more fill-ins. And if they happen to ease onto the stage, I can lay back. I think that says it all. It's simple.
Now, you mentioned the Hot Time in the Town of Berlin. That was a big hit during the Second World War.
Oh, listen, it saved my life financially during World War II, that's for sure.
Give us a little.
All right. There'll be a hot time in the town of Berlin when the Yanks go marching in. I want to be there, boy. Spread some joy when they take over Berlin. There'll be a hot time in the town of Berlin when the Brooklyn boys begin to take the joint apart and tear it down. When they take over Berlin, I'm gonna grab a Frau and show her how we paint the town back in Kokomo. Take a hike through Hitler's change that Heil to what you know, Joe. There'll be a hot time in the town of Berlin. The Yanks go marching in. Oh, how you gonna keep them happy down on the farm after they've taken Berlin, sweet after they've taken Berlin.
And we'll be back with more of Joe Bushkin after this. More.
All right. The Russians wrecked me on this one. They marched in first.
52nd Street, Joe, from 50 years ago.
Right. That's a half a C, right?
In those days, back in the 30s, there were Bunny Berrigan, Louis Prima, yourself playing on the street that never slept, they call it. That was 50 years ago. Where's the musical climate of New York now?
Well, in my own case, well, no, there's some great guys playing around. Like I have little Howard Alden, a 24-year-old kid who just plays like Johnny Smith. You know, he's a great player, and I love him. And for me, these are the good old days. Of course, I've got a great band at the St. Regis. I've got Major Holly. I've got Howard Alden.
But is jazz alive, Joey, or is that a thing of the past?
Well, jazz never went anyplace, really. It's just, I mean, I think economically it's very difficult to travel a name band around because of the hotel room tabs and such. I mean, everything is, you know, it's just escaped itself. In my own case, I love having just the 3 horns and 3 rhythm, and that makes it great. We can jump into a Volkswagen bus and make it, and one of the guys can drive. That's saving a few bucks.
So in a sea of rock music, jazz still lives.
Well, I'll tell you, I went down to Fat Tuesdays this like this past Monday night to see Les Paul, and you know what a genius man he is. And that place was rocking. It was loaded. Lou Levy, the piano player, sat in. I sat in. There was some rock guy named Jimmy Page playing the guitar. The place was swinging. So there are people around who do want to hear some music.
Let me ask your perspective on another slant of life in New York.
Okay.
You've been around the city now for 50 years, on and off. What is the quality of life now in New York compared when you were first making it on 52nd Street a half-century ago?
Well, in a strange way, no matter what has happened, the quality of my life has never really changed, because it's the music that keeps it straight for me. And then I haven't changed my way of playing in the 50 years, so the quality of life remains the same as a result.
Granted, but what do you see about you, about the city? Has the city changed?
It's only because of things you read about, and there are things that are happening to people that you always, you know, it never happens to you, it happens to someone else always. For example, I kind of enjoy kind of strolling down to P.J. Clark's from the St. Regis. That's only, what, 4 blocks to 55th and 3rd from 55th and 5th. And the other night I was walking down, and there was a huge young fellow, and he's about 6'2". He looked like a fullback, and he was wearing jogging shoes, and you couldn't hear the footsteps. But I became aware of the fact that he kept crossing the street and going back and forth, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I jumped into a cab for the remaining 2.5 blocks, just as a matter of a slight paranoia or whatever, and it had nothing to do with anything. I think he was just kind of running around. I don't know.
Well, back in the 30s, you would finish work at the famous store about 4 a.m.
Yeah, right.
Did you like to walk men when you finished the gig?
Oh, listen, there were many nights. Eddie Condon used to stay at my parents' place with me because I was living at home, and we used to walk from 52nd Street and 5th clear up to 103rd and Madison, where we lived.
At 4 in the morning?
At 4 in the morning, and look in the windows, and just, it was wonderful, you know, when the weather was right, of course.
Things have changed in that respect.
For sure. In fact, the other day is the first time I'd been in a subway in a long, long time, and I was really taken, you know, I felt my own pulse to make sure I was there, you know. I couldn't believe all the graffiti, and I thought that kind of is rugged, because, I mean, people who come from other cities, for example, London, the Tube is always so nice and neat. And I don't, and Paris, and I don't know why they can't arrange a little spick and span for those, you know, for the outside of those machines.
Joe, you're 69.
The year Woodrow Wilson was reelected.
Why do you keep on playing? I mean,
well, if I don't do this, you know, this is, if you don't mind me getting into a little Greek philosophy with you, Sisyphus, you know, Greek Sisyphus,
okay.
the Greek god, used to push a huge rock up a mountain and then run around and push it back down and then run around and push it back up. And one of the other gods, I think one of the gods who is the god of industry or whatever, said, "What are you doing, Sisyphus?" And Sisyphus said, "If I don't do this, I ain't got nothing to do. If I don't play the piano, what am I going to do? I'd be taking the garbage out on the farm."
Joe, I hope you...
I do go to the racetrack every Sunday. It's a matter of religious... That's my religious holiday, every Sunday.
Joe, I hope you keep on pushing that rock for a lot, many more years to come. Joe is at the King Cole Room at the St. Regis Hotel. He is a legend in his own time. And, Joe, why don't you play us off with a tune you wrote with Louis Armstrong?
I wrote for Louis Armstrong. This was my wedding gift. And he was recording A Song Is Born from the film, and he told me, "I ain't going around looking for silver for you cats." So he said, "Come up with a lead sheet," and he put it on the other side of A Song Is Born. And it's called Lovely Weather We're Having. Lovely weather we're having, mind if we take a walk? Aren't you the girl who said hello years ago? But I was too shy to talk. Lovely weather we're having, mind if I tell some jokes? Understand, you know we're grown-up folks. I remember once I had a dream. I think I dream it still. And I live with you in a great big house like that rich man late, baby, and so forth. Da-da-da-da, it's getting late, here's your gate. Do you mind if I steal a kiss? Lovely weather we're having. Mind if I steal a kiss?
Joey Bushkin, I'm Stewart Klein, and this has been Off the Set. And Joe, I want some up-tempo as we go out. Of anything.